Okay, and I already talked about blinding. I think we all know what this is. It's double blinding is when the researcher and the subject, neither of them know what experimental condition they're in. And the most typical thing for this would be the sugar pill, the placebo versus the actual medication. It's a more rigorous experiment if the person handing out the pills, in addition to the person taking the pills, don't know what pill they're getting. Okay, now on design, this is sort of obvious, but I just thought I'd cover it quickly. Between groups design means that your participants are either in one group or the other group. So, for example, the Gatorade versus Sprite design. You're either one of the people who drank Gatorade or you're one of the people who drank Sprite. That's between groups. Within subjects design is that the same group of subjects serves in more than one treatment. And this is very typically a pre-test, post-test thing. So, for example, we have one observation of you before psychotherapy and another observation of you after psychotherapy. That would be within subjects design. And in fact, what we usually have is a mixed design, and this would be a combination of these two, so that you have a between groups element, which would be, let's say, type of psychotherapy, cognitive, behavioral, or psychodynamic, and then you have a within subjects factor, which would be pre-test, post-test for, let's say, depression. Okay, another, I think, relatively simple type of design, but I'm just going to talk about it briefly. The single subject AB design. And what's happening here is you collect baseline information, you do a treatment and collect information at that time, then you remove the treatment, whatever that might be, and you see, does the person return to the baseline, or basically what happens when there's no treatment being implemented, and then finally you reinstate the treatment and see what happens next as a result of having gone through that sequence. Okay, now just three types of experimental design, the way to sort of organize yourself. Pre-experimental design, quasi-experimental design, and true experimental design. Pre-experimental design has no control group, and obviously it's not randomly, people are not randomly assigned in the pre-experimental design. So you have one group. Pre-test, post-test is an example of a pre-experimental design. Not very rigorous. You can't control groups to each other, obviously, because there's only the one group, and there are a lot of threats to the validity of your findings. Okay, then you have quasi-experimental design, and this, as I said earlier, this is probably what most of you are going to end up doing for your dissertations. In this type of design, you do have a control group, but people are not randomly assigned to either control or experimental groups. Here's one example. There are other kinds of designs. I mean, you can certainly open a book and you'll find, 10, 15 different kinds of experimental designs listed. I thought this was a good example. This is a pre-test, post-test, non-equivalent groups design. And I'll say, for example, in my dissertation that I did, I studied people who went to a meditation retreat. And so what I had was anyone who would agree to participate in my study from the meditation retreat, I gave them a pre-test, they did the retreat, then I gave them a post-test on basically their mood. And then I found what we call a convenience sample. It's a group of people who would agree to help me out and participate in the research, who did the same thing. Pre-test, then, well, they didn't have a treatment, they were a control group, so basically nothing happened, but 10 days elapsed, because it was a 10-day retreat, and then a post-test. So that's an example of a quasi-experimental design. Okay, then the true experimental design is the gold standard, obviously, of research, where people are randomly assigned to one group or the other, and you give them, one treatment or the other. Actually, it should be like this: X1 and X2. With X2 may well be nothing. It's a control group, and then the post-test. This is called a post-test equivalent groups. And can you see that? Like, for example, if you were trying to measure the impact of a treatment approach on sex offenders, you would take your population of sex offenders that you had access to and randomly assign them either to a treatment condition or a control condition, and then you would do some kind of post-test measure to see if your treatment was substantially better than no treatment at all. Okay, that's it for experimental design. You're welcome to read up on this on your own. To me, this is the kind of thing that it's pretty easy to go over from a good stats book or a book on research methodology.